What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. Again, in most cases, this is a review of stories you've already heard about. Reviewing these events keeps them fresh in your mind and allows your mind to think of new ways in which these events may actually affect you. So, of course, I recommend you watching this episode in its entirety, but I'm a realist. 50 minutes or so of me talking might get a little rough, so I break down the episode into snippets with each story. You'll see it in the timeline, so feel free to just jump through to any story that you find interesting. I also list the breakpoints along with the actual story that's within that time period in the description below, so again, feel free to just jump around between the stories. Now, if you like these episodes, of course, I ask you to like them, and if you're not already, subscribe to my channel. With that, let's jump right in.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
We start off with phishing. Microsoft researchers uncovered a custom phishing kit dubbed TodayZoo that was used in an extensive series of credential phishing campaigns. A phishing kit is a set of software or services aimed at facilitating phishing campaigns. In most cases, a phishing kit is an archive file containing images, scripts, and HTML pages that allow threat actors to create a phishing page that is used to trick recipients into providing their credentials. TodayZoo borrows large pieces of code from other phishing kits investigated by Microsoft in the past. These portions of code also include the comment markers, dead links, and other holdovers from the previous kits. The kit was first spotted by the IT giant in December 2020 because of the consistency in the redirection patterns, domains, and other techniques, tactics, and procedures, aka TTPs, of its related campaigns. Experts attributed the kit to a threat actor that is behind the old phishing kit template, or an old phishing kit template. Microsoft experts speculate the threat actor has implemented its own credential harvesting logic. Now, since March 2021, Microsoft observed a series of phishing campaigns abusing the awsapps.com domain to send the phishing messages. The email messages impersonated Microsoft and leveraged a zero-point font obfuscation technique to evade detection. Attackers used different lures in the message body over the months, including password reset and fake fax and scanner notifications. The analysis of the kit revealed that a large part of the code borrows from the Dance Vida phishing kit. TodayZoo demonstrates that threat actors could create their own variants of phishing kits from publicly available frameworks to meet their needs. We now move on to patches. Google has released Chrome 95.0.4638.69 for Windows, Mac, and Linux to address two zero-day vulnerabilities tracked as CVE 2021-38000 and CVE 2021-38003 actively exploited in attacks in the wild. Google fixed a total of 7 vulnerabilities with the latest release of the popular browser. CVE 2021-38000 is an insufficient validation of untrusted input in intents. The flaw was reported by Clement Lesigne, Neil Mehta, and Maddie Stone of Google Threat Analysis Group on the 15th of September 2021. CVE 2021-38003 is an inappropriate implementation in V8 open source high performance JavaScript and WebAssembly engine. This vulnerability was reported by Clement Lesigne from Google Tag and Samuel Gross from Google Project Zero on the 26th of October 2021. Now, Google is aware that exploits in CVE 2021-38000 and CVE 2021-38003 exist in the wild, reads the security advisory published by Google. The IT giant did not reveal the details of the attacks exploiting the above flaws. Google already addressed a total of 15 zero-day vulnerabilities since the beginning of the year. We move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. Microsoft discovered a vulnerability in macOS dubbed Shrootless, CVE 2021-30892, that can allow attackers to bypass System Integrity Protection, or SIP, and perform malicious activities such as gaining root privileges and installing rootkits on vulnerable devices. Now, you heard that right. Microsoft found a vulnerability in macOS. It's not like Microsoft has tons to do on their own platform. They're looking at other platforms as well. System integrity protection, also referred to as rootless, is a macOS security feature introduced at OS X El Capitan back in 2015. SIP technology restricts a root user from performing operations that may compromise system integrity. The flaw was reported to Apple through the Microsoft Security Vulnerability Research, or MSVR. By design, SIP only allows processes signed by Apple or those with special entitlements like Apple Software Updates and Apple Installers to modify these protected parts of macOS. The researchers reported that a threat actor could create a specially crafted file that would hijack the installation process. Microsoft experts discovered the Shrootless security flaw after noticing that the system_install_d daemon had the com.apple.rootless.install.inheritable entitlement that allowed any child process to fully bypass SIP file system restrictions. Apple addressed the flaw with the release of security updates on October 26th. The company credited Jonathan Barr of Microsoft for this issue. Cream Finance is a decentralized lending protocol for individuals. Now, you may recall a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it's about a month or two now, this company, Cream, the dollar bill y'all, their sort of tagline, or cash rules everything, they were in the news in the past. Now, it promises earnings to users who are passively holding ETH and WBTC. Threat actors have stolen $130 million worth of cryptocurrency assets from the decentralized finance platform. The attack was also confirmed by the company. According to the experts, the attackers have likely exploited a vulnerability in the platform's flash loan feature, then transferred the stolen funds to a wallet under their control before splitting them through their other wallets. Cream Finance has quickly addressed the flaw. Yeah, after losing $130 million, they quickly addressed the flaw. Unfortunately, this is the third time Cream Finance has been hacked this year. In August, threat actors have stolen $29 million. That's the story I was talking about earlier. So it's back in August, and we're now in November. And another $37 million were stolen in February. Cybersecurity firm Avast has released today decryption file utilities for AtomSilo and LockFile ransomware that allow the victims to recover their files for free. Experts pointed out that AtomSilo and LockFile ransomware only have a few minor differences. For this reason, Avast provides a single decryptor. On October 17, 2021, researcher Jiri Vinopal announced to have cracked the AtomSilo ransomware by exploiting a vulnerability that allowed him to decrypt the files without paying the ransom. Avast highlights a limitation of the decryption process because its Avast AtomSilo decryptor relies on a known file format in order to verify that the file was successfully decrypted. This implies that some files, such as files with proprietary or unknown format, may not be decrypted. Avast has released today also a decryption key for the tool for the Babuk ransomware that allows victims to recover their files for free. The decryptor was created using the leaked source code and decryption key. Researchers from Bleeping Computer tested the decryptor and determined that it will likely only work for victims whose keys were leaked as part of the Babuk ransom source code dump. So you have decryptors now available for 3 different ransomwares: AtomSilo, LockFile, and Babuk ransomware. Grief ransomware operators announced to have hacked the U.S. National Rifle Association, or NRA, and threatened to leak the stolen data. The NRA was added to the list of compromised organizations on the leak site of the group. That gang also published a set of documents as proof of the hack. The analysis of the sample doesn't allow to determine whether the gang breached the organization or one of its branches. Researchers linked the Grief ransomware to Double Paymer operations that is considered part of the Evil Corp. Evil Corp has recently launched a new ransomware called Macau Locker to evade U.S. sanctions that prevent victims from making ransom payments. The Evil Corp cybercrime group, aka Dridex Gang, Indrix Spider, and the Dridex Gang, and TA505, has been active in cybercrime activity since 2007. The group started its operations by developing and distributing the infamous Dridex banking Trojan. Then it switched to ransomware operation by infecting victims' computer networks with the BitPaymer ransomware. North Korea-linked Lazarus APT Group is now targeting IT supply chain companies, researchers from Kaspersky Lab warns. The activity of the Lazarus APT Group surged in 2014 and 2015. Its members used mostly custom-tailored malware in their attacks. This threat actor has been active since at least 2009, possibly as early as 2007, and it was involved in both cyber espionage campaigns and sabotage activities aimed to destroy data and disrupt systems. The group is considered responsible for the massive WannaCry ransomware attack, a string of Swift attacks in 2016, and the Sony Pictures hack. The app group used a new variant of the blinding scan backdoor in attacks aimed at a Latvian IT vendor and a South Korean think tank, respectively, in May and June. The nation-state actor used its multi-platform malware framework, MITRE framework. The MITRE malware framework could target Windows, Linux, and macOS operating systems. The malware framework implements a wide range of features that allow attackers to fully control the infected systems. According to the experts from Kaspersky that first analyzed the framework, the MITRE campaign has been active at least since April of 2018. Kaspersky experts reported that the Lazarus app is building supply chain attack capabilities with an updated Death Note, aka Operation Dream Job, malware cluster that is an updated variant of the Blinding Can Rat. The use of the Blinding Can Rat was first documented by the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, in August 2020. The Blinding Can was employed in attacks on U.S. and foreign companies operating in the military, defense, and aerospace sectors. The Blinding Can Rat implements the following built-in functions: retrieve information about all installed disks, including the disk type and the amount of free space on that disk, get operating system version information, get processor information, get system name, get local IP address information, get the victim's media access control or MAC address, create, start, and terminate a new process and its primary thread, search, read, write, move, and execute files, get and modify file or directory timestamps, change the current directory for a process or file, delete malware and artifacts associated with the malware from the infected system. These are all very standard features and functions for most rats out there, or malware out there today, so there's nothing really surprising here. This is the first IT supply chain attack conducted by Lazarus that was documented by Kaspersky researchers. Sticking with Iran, a cyber attack has disrupted gas stations from the state-owned National Iranian Oil Products Distribution Company, or NIOPDIS, across Iran. The attack also defaced the screens at the gas pumps and gas price billboards. In multiple cities, the billboards were displaying messages like Khamenei, where's our fuel, and free gas at local gas station's name. After the attack, the screens at the impacted NIOPDC gas stations were showing the words Cyber Attack 64411, which is the phone number for the office of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. NIOPDC currently manages more than 3,500 gas stations across the country. The operations at the gas pumps were interrupted immediately after the incident because the employees were not able to charge customers for the fuel they were buying. At this time, no one claimed responsibility for the attack, but Iranian authorities speculate the incident was the result of a cyber attack orchestrated by a foreign hostile state. The Iranian TV confirmed that the root cause of the incident is a nationwide cyber attack that targeted petrol stations. A CyberArk security researcher, Ido Hurvich, demonstrated how it is possible to crack Wi-Fi at scale by exploiting a vulnerability that allows retrieving the PMKID hash. Hurvich has managed to crack 70% of a 5,000 Wi-Fi network sample in Tel Aviv to demonstrate that it is easy to compromise Wi-Fi networks. The expert gathered 5,000 Wi-Fi network hashes by strolling the streets in Tel Aviv with simple Wi-Fi sniffing equipment composed of an AWS 036ACH Alpha network card for $50 that can work in monitoring mode and is able to inject packets. The expert used the free and open source packet analyzer Wireshark running on Ubuntu. The PMKID is calculated by using a hashing function having the PMK name, the MAC_AP, and the MAC_STA as input. Hurvich used an attack technique devised by Jens Atom Stoibs, Hashcat's lead developer, to retrieve the PMKIDs that allowed him to derive the password. The attack technique is clientless. This means that an attacker doesn't need to carry out the attack in real time. He just needs to capture a single frame and eliminate wrong passwords and malformed frames that are disturbing the cracking process. The recommendations provided by the expert to protect themselves: choosing a complex password. A strong password should include at least one lowercase character, one uppercase character, one symbol, and one digit. It should be at least 10 characters long, which is different than what a lot of people say, which is, they say minimum 8 characters. The recommendation today, currently, is at least 10 characters long. It should be easily remembered and hard to anticipate. Bad example, summer $021. You should change the default username and password of your router. You should update your router firmware version. You should disable weak encryption protocols such as WAP or WAP1 and disable WPS. The FBI published a flash alert to warn of Ranzy Locker ransomware operations that had already compromised at least 30 U.S. companies this year. The gang has been active since at least 2020. Threat actors hit organizations from various industries. The attack vector most used by the Ranzy Locker ransomware operators are brute force attempts targeting remote desktop protocol, or RDP, credentials. In recent attacks, the group also exploited known Microsoft Exchange server vulnerabilities and used phishing messages to target computer networks. Once gained access to the target network, the ransomware gang attempts to locate sensitive data, including customer information, PII-related files, and financial records. The Ranzy Locker ransomware targets Windows systems, including servers and virtual machines. The recommended mitigations included in the alert: implement regular backups of all data to be stored as air-gapped, password-protected copies offline. Ensure these copies are not accessible for modification or deletion from any system where the original data resides. Implement network segmentation such that all machines on your network are not accessible for every other machine. Install and regularly update antivirus software on all hosts and enable real-time detection. Now this, a lot of people on many forums have always said, well, web servers and this kind of server and that kind of server doesn't need an antivirus. And I have been saying for years that every system should have an antivirus, because even if it just helps you that 10%, it's 10% fewer potential attack vectors that you have, or ways to catch at least somebody or something that's malicious on your system. Install updates, patches, operating systems, software, and firmware as soon as updates and patches are released. Review domain controllers, servers, workstations, and active directories for new or unrecognized user accounts. Audit user accounts with administrative privileges and configure access controls with least privilege in mind. Do not give all users administrative privileges. Disable unused remote access, remote desktop protocol ports, and monitor remote access RDP logs for any unusual activity. Consider adding an email banner to emails received from outside your organization. Disable hyperlinks in received emails, and use double authentication when logging into accounts or services. Researchers from Avast have uncovered a widespread premium SMS scam on Google Play Store tracked as UltimaSMS. The name comes from the first apps they discovered, called Ultima Keyboard 3D Pro. Threat actors used at least 151 Android apps with 10.5 million downloads from over 80 countries to subscribe victims to premium subscription services. Attackers used a fake photo editor, spam call blockers, camera filter, games, and other apps, and promoted them via Instagram and TikTok channels. Most of the downloads were made by users in the Middle East, such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. Upon installing the apps, they check their location, International Mobile Equipment Identifier, IMEI, and phone number to determine which country, area code, and language to use for the scam. When the victim opens the app, it'll be displayed on a screen that the victim will be displayed a screen that requests to enter their phone number, and in some cases, email address to gain access to the app's advertised service or product. Once the app has obtained the required permissions, it subscribes the victim to SMS service that could cost up to $40 per month, depending on the country and mobile carrier. Experts recommend disabling the premium SMS option to their carrier and recommend users avoid entering a phone number unless they trust the app. Mobile users are advised to read the fine print before entering the details and carefully check reviews before installing an app. Recently, security researchers from Simperium have uncovered a piece of malware dubbed GriftHorse that was used for a similar purpose, and that has affected more than 10 million Android smartphones across more than 70 countries. If you recall, the GriftHorse was part of one of my previous weeklies. An unknown ransomware gang is exploiting a critical SQL injection flaw tracked at CVE 2021-42258 in the popular billing software suite BillQuick Web Suite time to deploy ransomware. The attacks were first spotted this month by researchers from security firm Huntress that were also able to demonstrate the exploit. The ransomware gang exploited CVE 2021-42258 flaw to gain access to the computer network of a U.S. engineering company and deploy ransomware. BQE has a self-proclaimed user base of 400,000 users worldwide. For this reason, this campaign is alarming the experts. The researchers demonstrated that to trigger the vulnerability, an attacker would navigate to the login page and enter a single quote. Experts also noticed that the error handlers for this page display a full traceback that could contain sensitive information about the server-side code. Huntress Labs reported the flaw to BQE software that addressed it on October 7th. The experts also found 8 other BillQuick zero-day vulnerabilities tracked to CVE 2021-42344, CVE 2021-42345, CVE 2021-42346, CVE 2021-42571, 42572, 42573, 42741, 42742. Bleeping Computer speculates that the gang has been spreading this ransomware since at least May 2020, and it borrows large portions of code from other auto-IT-based ransomware families. Security researchers at Lookout Threat Labs have discovered a new Android malware dubbed AbstractEmu with rooting capabilities that is distributed on Google Play and prominent third-party stores like Amazon App Store and the Samsung Galaxy Store. The malware code abstraction and anti-emulation checks of avoid analysis. The experts discovered 19 utility apps containing the malicious code that were distributed via Google Play and third-party app stores. Some of these apps had thousands of downloads. Google quickly removed the tainted apps from its store after Lookout shared its findings. Experts pointed out that rooting malware is rare and dangerous. They can allow attackers to gain root access to the device and perform malicious activities without user interaction. The experts speculate AbstractEmu was developed by a well-resourced group with financial motivation. Their code base and evasion techniques used by the threat actors are quite sophisticated. Once installed, the AbstractEmu malware will begin harvesting and sending system information to the command and control server while the malware is waiting for further commands. Experts noticed that the extensive permissions granted through root access also give the attackers common permissions used by banking Trojans to receive any two-factor authentication code sent via SMS or run in the background and launch phishing attacks. Some of the permissions obtained by the malware also allow for remote interactions with the device, such as capturing content on the screen and accessing accessibility services, which enables attackers to interact with other apps on the device. The researchers found similarities with the NSA and Vulture malware families. A high-severity vulnerability, CVE 2021-39341, in the OptinMonster plugin can allow unauthorized API access and sensitive information disclosure on roughly 1 million WordPress sites. The flaw was discovered by WordFence researcher Chloe Chamberlain on September 28, 2021, and the development team behind the plugin addressed it on October 7, 2021. The OptinMonster WordPress plugin allows creating opt-in forms to convert visitors to subscribers and customers. The plugin and the OptinMonster app site rely on the use of API endpoints to allow easy integration and simplify the design process. Chamberlain pointed out that the majority of the REST API endpoints were implemented in an insecure way, allowing unauthenticated attackers to access many of the various endpoints on WordPress websites running vulnerable versions of the plugin. The most critical implementation is related to the /WP JSON/OMAP version 1 support endpoint that can disclose data such as the site's full path on the server and API keys needed for requests on the OptinMonster site. An attacker holding the API key could make changes on the OptinMonster accounts or even plant malicious JavaScript snippets on the site. Chamberlain also explained that an unauthenticated attacker can access the API endpoint and bypass security checks using the HTTP request under certain conditions. An unauthenticated attacker could add malicious JavaScript to a WordPress site running the OptinMonster plugin to redirect visitors to external malicious domains and sites being completely taken over. The researcher found other vulnerable REST API endpoints registered in the plugin that can allow unauthenticated visitors, or in some cases authenticated users with minimal permissions, to perform unauthorized actions. Threat actors can exploit the access to this endpoint to conduct malicious activities such as changing settings and viewing campaign data. Staying with WordPress, researchers have discovered a homicidal WordPress plugin that allows subscribers to wipe sites clean of content. The high-severity security flaw is found in HashTheme's Demo Importer, a plugin that's used in more than 8,000 active installations. According to security researchers at WordFence, The vulnerability allows any authenticated user to completely wipe a vulnerable site, permanently deleting nearly all database content as well as all uploaded media. The HashThemes Demo Importer plugin is designed to let admins easily import demos for WordPress themes with a single click, without having to deal with the dependencies such as XML files, JSON theme options, .dat customizer files, or widget files. WordFence's Gall explained that the HashThemes Demo Importer plugin hadn't performed capability checks for many of its AJAX actions. AJAX, the JavaScript-based technology that allows a web page to fetch new information and present itself without refreshing the page. Specifically, any logged-in user could trigger the HDI_install_demo AJAX function and provide a reset parameter set to true, Gall wrote, resulting in the plugin running its database reset function. This function wiped the database by truncating every database table on the site except for WP options, WP users, and WP user meta, Gall continued. Once the database was wiped, the plugin would then run its clear uploads function, which deleted every file and folder in the WP content uploads folder. ESET researchers discovered Wslink, a previously undescribed loader for Windows binaries that, unlike similar loaders, runs as a server and executes modules in memory. The name Wslink comes from one of its DLLs. At this time, researchers have yet to determine the initial compromise vector. They observed only a few infections in the past 2 years in Central Europe, North America, and the Middle East. Most of the samples analyzed by ESET are packed with mpress, and some parts of the code are virtualized. The researchers were not able to obtain any of the modules the loader can receive by the command and control server. ESET did not find any circumstances or similarities, between the TTPs associated with these infections that could link them to a known threat actor. Wslink runs as a service and can accept modules in the form of encrypted portal executables, or PEs, files, only from a specific IP address. The decrypted module is loaded into memory using the memory module library. The modules reuse the loader functions for communication, keys, and sockets. This implies that the malware doesn't have to initiate new outbound connections. Discourse is a popular open-source internet forum and mailing list management software application. The US CISA published a security advisory to urge administrators to fix a critical remote code execution flaw tracked as CV 2021-41163 in Discourse installs. The vulnerability received a CVSS version 3 score of 10.0. Discourse, an open-source discussion platform, has released a security advisory to address a critical remote code execution vulnerability, CV 2021-41163, in Discourse versions 2.7.8 and earlier, reads the advisory published by the researchers. The vulnerability was discovered by the researcher Jornchen of Phenolit, who also published technical details about the flaw. CISA recommends development teams install versions 2.7.9 or later that address the vulnerability or apply the necessary workarounds. A quick search of Discourse installs using the Shodan search engine reveals the existence of 8,639 potentially exploitable systems, most of them in the US. Threat actors have hacked into the employee email system of the UMass Memorial Health healthcare system, potentially accessing the personal information of thousands of patients. The security breach took place between June 2020 and January and impacted more than 209,048 individuals. Potentially exposed data included social security numbers, insurance information, and medical information. Thousands of patients at UMass Memorial Health have been notified of a data breach involving the health system's email systems, reads a post published by the Telegram and Gazette. Some of the emails accessed by hackers included patient information, such as social security numbers and medical-related data. The breach affected more than, as I said, 209,048 individuals, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which documents such incidents. At this time, the healthcare system was not able to determine how much of the personal information may have been infiltrated. The organization will provide free credit monitoring and data protection assistance to the impacted individuals. ESET researchers discovered a new Hive ransomware variant that was specifically developed to encrypt Linux and FreeBSD. Researchers at the cybersecurity firm believe that the new encryptors are still under development. Both variants are written in Golang, but the strings, package and names, and function names have been obfuscated. The Linux variant seems to be affected by some bugs. The researchers noticed that the encryption process does not work when the malware is executed with an explicit path. Unlike the Windows variant of the ransomware that supports up to 5 execution options, the new Linux and FreeBSD variants only support one command line parameter, no wipe. According to ESET, Linux versions of the Hive ransomware also fails to trigger the encryption if it's not executed with root privileges. In August, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI, released a flash alert on the Hive ransomware attacks that includes technical details and indications of compromise associated with the operations of the gang. The Hive gang has been active since June 2021. It implements a ransomware as a service model and employs a wide variety of tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs. Government experts state that the group uses multiple mechanisms to compromise networks of the victims, including phishing emails with malicious attachments to gain access and remote desktop protocol to move laterally once on the network. Government officials confirmed that Papua New Guinea's finance ministry was hit by a ransomware attack that disrupted government payments and operations. The ransomware affected the Department of Finance's integrated financial management system a week ago, said the finance minister and acting treasury, John Pundari. Pundari also added that the government didn't pay a ransom to the threat actors and the system was recovered from backups. The system was used to manage access to hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign aid money. The government was not able to pay checks and ordinary operations were impacted. As a precaution, the government blocked access to the affected network to sanitize the infected systems. The department has now managed to fully resolve the system. However, because of the risk, we are playing safe by not allowing full access to the affected network, said Pundari. At this time, the authorities did not provide details about the attack, such as the ransomware family involved, if the department has suffered a data breach. The operations support system, Radio and Core, provides a centralized interface into the radio and core components. The operations support systems are all those systems used by companies that provide communication services for networks integrated function. Let's consider the case of the activation of a new line for a customer. While the order and customer data are collected through the CRM, the configuration of the network is automated through the OSS. For example, let's consider the case of a client that requires the activation of a new telephone line. The systems that handle these requests, CRM, gather user data, but it isn't able to configure the network to provide the service to the customer. The OSSs allow telecommunications carriers to automate this process and also to carry out management operations of the network, such as the update of the baseband systems located on the buildings of our cities. Which is why the fact that Red Team research found 2 rare flaws in Ericsson's OSS-RC component is so important. Unfortunately, the OSS systems also represent a single point of failure. A remote code execution vulnerability affecting an OSS can allow attackers to potentially compromise all connected systems, including basebands. The vulnerabilities have been reported to Ericsson by the researchers Alessandro Bosco, Mohammed Anime Ouad, and by the head of laboratory Massimiliano Brogli. SolarWinds' security breach was not isolated. Russia-linked Nobelium APT group has targeted 140 managed service providers and cloud service providers and successfully breached 14 of them since May 2021. Nobelium APT, Cozy Bear, and the Dukes, known as APT29, Cozy Bear, and the Dukes, is the threat actor that conducted supply chain attack against SolarWinds, which involved multiple families of implants, including the Sunburst backdoor, Teardrop malware, GoldMax malware, Cybot, and Goldfinder backdoors. Nobelium focused on government organizations, non-government organizations, or NGOs, think tanks, military, IT service providers, health technology and research, and telecommunications providers. The recent large-scale campaign uncovered by Microsoft aimed at the service providers was uncovered by Microsoft researchers. In order to avoid detection, threat actors repetitively changed tactics and used a broad range of hacking tools and malware. Attackers did not leverage exploits for vulnerabilities in the target organizations, but rather they used well-known techniques like password spray and spear phishing. The campaign confirms that Russia-linked threat actors are trying to gain long-term systematic access to multiple points in the technology supply chain to carry out cyber espionage activities. The iPhone of New York Times journalist Ben Hubbard was repeatedly infected with NSO Group'sPegasus spyware. The device was compromised 2 times in July 2020 and June 2021. The attacks were documented by the Citizen Lab research team from the University of Toronto. The infections took place while the journalist was working on a book about Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Researchers also discovered some forensic artifacts on Hubbard's iPhone related to the Pegasus spyware as early as April 2018, but it is not clear if they were associated with a genuine infection attempt or some tests conducted by the attackers. The Hubbard's iPhone was hacked on July 12, 2020 and June 13, 2021. The attackers used a Kismet and forced entry zero-click exploits respectively. The discovery of the attack was possible after another investigation in which the researchers recovered the forced entry exploit from a backup of a Saudi activist's iPhone. Experts also reported that Hubbard's phone logs show the presence of Pegasus infection, aka Hippocrene factor, that took place on July 12, 2020. The initial compromise was introduced into Hubbard's phone sometime after January 29, 2020, and before December 14, 2020. We move on to other security news. MITRE and the DHS's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, have announced the release of the 2021 Common Weaknesses Enumeration Most Important Hardware Weaknesses list. The list was published with the intent of raising awareness of common hardware weaknesses through CWE and educating designers and programmers on how to address them as part of the product development lifecycle. The list includes a total of 12 vulnerabilities entries that had a score from 1.0.3 to 1.42. The highest possible score was 2.0. CIOs and security managers could also use the list to assess the efficiency of their program to secure hardware within their organizations. The list of weaknesses shared by the two organizations order by CWE identifier are CW11189, improper isolation of shared resources on system on a chip. CW1191, on-chip debug and test interface with improper access control. CW11231, improper prevention of lock bit modification. CW1233, security-sensitive hardware controls with missing lock bit protection. CW1240, use of a cryptographic primitive with a risky implementation. CW1244, internal asset exposed to unsafe debug access level or state. CW1256, improper restriction of software interfaces to hardware features. CW1260, improper handling of overlap between protected memory ranges. CW1272, sensitive information uncleared before debug power state transition. CW1274, improper access control for volatile memory containing boot code. CW1277, firmware non-updatable. CW1300, improper protection of physical side channels. The expert also shared a list of additional 5 weaknesses included in the hardware weaknesses on the cusp that should be addressed by risk managers. CW2226, sensitive information in resource not removed before reuse. CW1247, improper protection against voltage and clock glitches. CW1262, improper access control for register interface. CW1331, improper isolation of shared resources in network on chip. CW1332, improper handling of faults that lead to instruction skips. A new report published by Interpol titled The African Cyber Threat Assessment Report 2021 sheds light on cybercrime in Africa. The report aims at providing information about the most prevalent threats in Africa, a continent that is particularly vulnerable to cybercrime activities. According to the report, more than 90% of African businesses are operating without the necessary cybersecurity protocols in place. It's important to highlight that Africa was the fastest growing telephone and internet networks in the world, or has the fastest growing, and it has the widest use of mobile banking services. This rapid growth is not supported by the implementation of cybersecurity policies and standards, exposing African countries to their organizations to major risks. The Interpol African Cyber Threat Assessment Report 2021 identifies the most prominent threats in Africa based on input from Interpol member countries and data drawn from private sector partners. The top 5 threats are online scams. For African member countries, the highest reported and most pressing cyber threat across the region was identified as online scamming. This threat seeks to target and take advantage of victims' fears, insecurities, and vulnerabilities through phishing, mass mailing, and social engineering. Member countries have reported a sharp increase in the number of online banking scams, including instances of banking and credit card fraud. Number 2, digital extortion. This threat is also identified as one of the most prominent cyber threats within the region. Digital extortion seeks to target individuals with either allegations of sexually compromising images or through direct blackmail campaigns. While such threats are not new on the threat landscape, the move towards a digital society, particularly within the African region, has created new attack vectors for criminals to both obfuscate their identity and target new victims. Number 3, business email compromise. Alongside online scams, business email compromise, or BEC, was identified as a significant concern and threat to the region. Businesses and organizations that rely heavily on wire transfer transactions are vulnerable to this threat in Africa. The COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to the increase in this type of cybercrime. Number 4, ransomware. The threat of ransomware is expanding across the African continent. Allegedly, more than 61% of companies in this region were affected by ransomware in 2021 alone. These attacks targeted some African countries' critical infrastructure, including healthcare and maritime sectors. Number 5, botnets. Botnets are networks of compromised machines used as a tool to automate large-scale campaigns such as DDoS attacks, phishing, malware distribution, etc. The number of botnet victim detections in Africa was around 50,000, with a monthly average detection of 3,900. In Africa, there have been numerous high-profile instances of such DDoS attacks on critical infrastructure within the past 5 years. When dealing with ransomware attacks, Kaspersky reported that there were more than 1.5 million ransomware detections in 2020. Most targeted countries in Q1 2021 are Egypt, South Africa, and Tunisia. Interpol's regional cybercrime strategy for Africa aims at reaching the following strategic objectives: enhancing cybercrime intelligence for effective response to cybercrime, strengthening cooperation for joint operations against cybercrime, developing regional capacity and capabilities to combat cybercrime, promoting good cyber hygiene for a safer cyberspace. Now, from the beginning of this article, you may be saying, well, why are you telling me about cybercrime in Africa? A lot of companies, major corporations around the world, have partners, have people who are providing them products, have access to their network to some degree. So these partners that may have access to your company's network, if they get infected, they have the capability to infect you. So as much as we like to think in our own little bubble and say, okay, well, what are we doing? We need to be aware of what is happening out there. Hence why I'm sharing this story with you. So, a joint operation conducted by Europol, the Norwegian police, and other authorities led to the arrest of 12 individuals over ransomware attacks on organizations worldwide, including critical infrastructure operators. The suspects were involved in more than 1,800 ransomware attacks against victims across 71 countries. The threat actors focused on large corporations. The list of victims on the group also includes Norwegian giant Norsk Hydro that was hit in 2019. In just 1 week after the ransomware attack, the company declared it had more than $40 million in losses. A total of 12 individuals wreaking havoc across the world with ransomware attacks against critical infrastructure have been targeted as a result of a law enforcement and judicial operation involving 8 countries, reads the press release published by the Europol. These attacks are believed to have affected over 1,800 victims in 71 countries. These cyber actors are known for specifically targeting large corporations, effectively bringing their business to a standstill. The police seized over $52,000 in cash, 5 luxury cars, and a number of electronic devices that are currently being examined by the authorities. The suspects had different roles in prominent criminal rings. Some of them were in charge of penetrating the systems of the target organizations with different means, such as brute force attacks, SQL injections, phishing emails, and leveraging stolen credentials. Once gained access to the computer network of the organization, some of the suspects were in charge of to perform lateral movement and deploying malware such as TrickBot, or post-exploitation tools such as Cobalt Strike or PowerShell Empire. The malicious actors used several malware families in their attacks, including Locker Goga, Mega Cortex, and Dharma. The U.S. National Security Agency and the U.S. Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency have published a security advisory to warn of attacks on 5G networks through the hijacking of a provider's cloud resources. The report is part of a 4-part series that was built on the ESF Potential Threat Vectors to 5G Infrastructure white paper that was released by the U.S. agencies in May 2021. The guidance provides recommendations for preventing and mitigating cyber attacks on 5G infrastructure. The document focuses on mitigation for lateral movement attempts by threat actors who gained initial access into a 5G cloud system through the exploitation of a vulnerability. The risk of attacks from nation-state actors is high, and it is essential that U.S. telecommunications providers will implement best practices to secure the networks. CISA and NSA recommend 5G service providers and system integrators to implement the following measures to detect and block lateral movement in the 5G cloud. Implement secure identity and access management, or IDAM, in the 5G cloud. keep 5G cloud software up to date and free from known vulnerabilities, securely configure networking within 5G cloud, lock down communications among isolated network functions, monitor for indications of adversarial lateral movement, develop and deploy analytics and to detect sophisticated adversarial presence. An attacker can use cloud virtual networking to move through a network after initial compromise. Configurations to prevent and detect lateral movements is only one aspect of hardening a 5G cloud infrastructure. The detection and mitigation of lateral movement attempts within a 5G cloud system is shared responsibility among 5G cloud providers, network operators, mobile network operators, and customers, concludes the report. And that's just kind of how I feel they would probably be talking. Revel Ransomware Gang is one of the most successful ransomware operations. The group and its affiliated hit hundreds of organizations worldwide. On July 2nd, the gang hit the Kaseya cloud-based MSP platform, impacting MSPs and their customers. It asked for $70 million worth of Bitcoin for decrypting all impacted systems. Why am I telling you this? Well, Nikolai K. claims to be a trader of cryptocurrencies and social networks. The man lives in Russia and shows a luxurious lifestyle online. He is still at large because Russian authorities have yet to accuse him. He is supposedly one of the backers of the Revel ransomware gang. Now, German investigators claim to have identified the Russian man named Nikolai K., who is suspected to be a mastermind of the criminal organization. According to information from Bayerisch Rundfunk and Site Online, German investigative authorities have been targeting Nikolai K. for months. Investigators from the Federal Criminal Police Office, BKA, and LKA Baden-Württemberg consider the man to be one of the masterminds behind the notorious Revel malware and its alleged predecessor GandCrab, reported the Bavarian 24 website. The investigators have collected evidence that links Revel to GandCrab. Well, gee, thanks. I did a report on that months and months and months ago, and there's been information linking the two for years. The LKA Baden-Württemberg investigated a series of Bitcoin transactions associated with the payment of ransoms to the GandCrab ransomware group. One of the attacks against this software developer took place in 2019. Threat actors gained access to the employees' access data and were able to break into the systems of some customers. Another victim was Stuttgart State Theaters. The German police discovered Nikolai's email address, which was also used to register to over 60 websites, along with his phone number that is associated with a Telegram account. This account was used for legit crypto trading activities, but the investigation into some of the transactions revealed that some of them were associated to ransom payments. Researchers are not able to exclude that the man received the money from members of the ransomware gangs like Revel. So they think he's the guy, but they're not 100% sure he's the guy. But they still have an arrest warrant for him. Experts believe that the German authorities will require support from Russian peers, but the Russian government will likely deny the extradition of the man and his prosecution. Of course they will. With that, I say thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.